I'm Sean McCready, and welcome to the Philanthropy Podcast, where we explore joys, challenges, and opportunities in philanthropy. This week, I'm excited to bring you an interview with Jeff Cosgrove, Director of Politics, Advocacy, and Nonprofits at Conversant. In our conversation, Jeff touches on how nonprofits can cut through the noise in online advertising, what messaging is leading to increased donations, how to help boards and directors believe in and invest in online advertising, segmenting and oversegmenting, how gift attribution policies need to be redefined to catch up with an online and social platform, and how organizations can make the leap from being good to great in this area. Before we dive in, I want to remind you to please subscribe to the Philanthropy Podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're not sure how to subscribe, just visit thephilanthropypodcast.com and you'll see large subscribe links that make it easy for you. With that, let's get to our interview with Jeff. Today, we welcome to the Philanthropy Podcast Jeff Cosgrove, the Director of Politics, Advocacy, and Nonprofits at Conversant. Jeff, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's a pleasure to be on here and get to have the ear of your listeners.
Absolutely. We're excited about the conversation. I had a chance to meet Jeff at the Data and Marketing Association's Nonprofit Federation Conference that was held here in Chicago, and heard him speak about digital trends in fundraising and what are some of the areas that should be on the radar for people. And so we're excited today to talk about the idea of online fundraising and what it is we can do to separate our program from some of the others that are out there and how we can engage with our donors better. So Jeff, before we dive into all that, could you share a little bit of your background and how you ended up in your position that you are today?
Sure. Funnily enough, I got out of college and was a musician full-time and thought to myself, this is a terrible career for a potential family. And I ended up at happenstance working for a jazz magazine for about 6 years, and I worked in the advertising department where I started to work with college and university programs as well as a lot of nonprofit jazz relief musician advocacy groups, as well as a number of nonprofit jazz festivals. After the birth of my first son, the health insurance was not exactly plush at a family-owned jazz magazine, and my wife is a social worker. And so the opportunity came up to work at a political magazine, which was also a nonprofit, the Washington Monthly, which is a great publication still around. And I ended up going over there to help them rebuild their advertising program. And it was building on a lot of what I had done already, working with the schools and university programs, helping them promote to students, as well as starting to work with a lot of the nonprofit advocacy groups, helping them establish a presence in Washington, helping them get their voice heard, mostly in print and some beginning online. We had blog ads at the time, if you can remember that far enough back. And that was really kind of an eye-opening experience, because looking at and working with these nonprofits from the jazz world, which was a lot of fun, they had the same issues as these nonprofits like Heifer International and Save Darfur. It was, how do I connect with my constituents to kind of cut through the noise of all of the other organizations asking for money? And how do I make myself relevant to these people who could support my mission and have the high potential to believe in what we do, but they just don't know about us, or they know about us and have some preconception about what we do for the community we serve, or how we work with individuals, or how we work with potential donors. And so that was really what kind of boosted me up through the ranks of what I did, and starting to work with people and other organizations. Fast forward to now, I've been here at Conversant about 4 years, which has been fantastic. It's an amazing organization. And we are owned by Epsilon, a giant data company. And working with them on the nonprofit side, really working with these organizations hand in hand, and looking at their donor communication strategy. How do they look at acquisition? How do they kind of understand who they are, what they are, why they do what they do, and how do they connect that through the noise of all of the other people asking for money, all of the other organizations who say, yes, I need your support. And we help refine that message. We really help them connect to the right people, utilizing data and scale and technology and all of the other fun buzzwords that you can think of. We love to do. And it's been really kind of an amazing journey for me as somebody who's kind of moved into this role over the last few years.
Yeah, that seems like a very different world than the jazz advertising family-owned business, as you said. But it does sound like a lot of the ideas are probably very similar. In any advertising world, there's an understanding that noise is out there. That I often think we assume that every for-profit is advertising. And if not, we kind of question why not.
Right.
But I think sometimes when you present the idea of how do you advertise or how do you reach out as a nonprofit, people kind of think like, well, do we need to do that? And as opposed to just being assumed, yes, you have to be out there or otherwise there's no way to cut through that noise. But could you share a little bit on, what you've seen as effective methods to get your nonprofit's message out to an interested constituency in a way that does separate it from the others who are perhaps just kind of advertising or marketing for the sake of marketing?
Absolutely. The first big thing that I find the most difficult for a lot of organizations to kind of swallow is the fact that they need to move away from the idea that they're not-for-profit. Because there's a connotation there in a not-for-profit that the money isn't needed. We're not out to make a profit. Where when you change the conversation into we're a mission-driven organization, you are here supporting our mission. We need you to support our mission. We do the work to get the troops on the ground, to get the contact to the community. But it's really more about establishing the idea that we are mission-driven and that every dollar that a potential donor contributes goes to the bottom line of serving our community, whatever that community may be, whether it's cancer patients, whether it's Meals on Wheels and bringing meals to seniors, it doesn't matter. It's that clear idea that the money is important, we are mission driven, and here is our mission, and you are the foundation of our mission. Your support helps make our mission possible. And to me, that clear delineation, instead of we need money in these very kind of ethereal asks, it is amazing to see how just shifting that conversation to mission-driven makes for an organization. As simple as that may sound. When we talk to organizations and talk to them about having these more upfront, more direct asks in a way that's not confrontational, that really helps remind people that we understand that you're busy. We understand that you have a million things bombarding you. We understand that we have a million things to get down about, but supporting our mission, helping our organization help the community, and very clearly spelling out what those dollars go for and what that pledge of support goes for really gives that donor a sense of ownership, not only in the mission, but in the community.
I like your perspective of changing that mindset to what is our mission and how does that drive us? Because I don't know if it was one of our conversations or somebody else, but they shared that kind of great insight that nonprofit is a tax status. It's not a business structure. It's not a business plan.
Exactly.
Your organization's needs and mission drives the way you act. And so you, as you said, you need to create something that creates that sense of ownership. So with your donors who are most involved and have been with you for years, ownership, maybe that's something that's already there and you can obviously cultivate it. But how do you create that sense of ownership with people when you're kind of out there in a donor acquisition mode and trying to bring people in? Are there any ways in the online world that you'd say this is what we're seeing as effective today versus maybe what was effective a couple of years ago?
There's a few things. We've seen organizations do well with positive messaging. It's difficult to cultivate support on gloom and doom. I mean, obviously, and let's take this current situation in Houston, Harvey.
Yeah.
Millions of, residents are displaced, lots of damage. 80% of Houstonians don't have flood insurance because why would they? They're in a highland of Texas. And it's good to show people how, in a positive way, your donation does this. It captivates them to responding to an immediate crisis, but then helps cultivate them with, thank you so much. Because of you, we have moved 10 individuals from the Houston Convention Center. You can use digital media to continue a conversation once you've gotten them with that positive messaging into becoming more of a mission-driven donor. And really helping these people look at a positive spin, because everybody needs a smile on their face, especially these days. There's a lot of things to really get down about. And at the rate at which news barrages us, at the rate at which people get busy or overstimulated, there's always a need for people to feel positive, have a positive feeling about what they did today. And with that, I feel like that's how organizations have been starting to find more success in connecting in an acquisition strategy. I had one organization I worked with at the holidays that they're an animal organization, and to push the boundary a little bit, we ran a campaign that said, if you don't support X organization, and the ads had a picture of a cat, kitten and a puppy, what are you going to watch on YouTube all day? And, because cat and dog puppy videos are the highest viewed things on YouTube.
Yep.
And taking that relevant point of view, twisting it a little bit to say, you are kind of like wasting some time during the day because this just feels good. Why not support that? Because if you don't, the population of puppies and kittens is going to be less. It's taking a serious issue and just kind of pointing it back at people a little bit with we know you love this. We love this too. This is what we're serving with your donation. Kind of that tongue-in-cheek, fun idea that let's make the world a better place and remind you of the cuteness. Obviously, I'm just going to say puppies and kittens are a much easier sell than other organizations. But at the same time, it's that positive message. Look at some of these cancer organizations. You could have gloom and doom, but having the picture of the child with a smile on their face playing soccer with the ad, this organization saved my life. Please donate today to help other children like me. It's hard not to be positively emotional about that. And that's the thing. You're giving people something to smile about and some ownership, and the idea of access to positive feeling and some source of joy that they get from making this donation and supporting your organization.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that positive messaging is doing well in differentiating yourself, which it makes sense. If you think of what our typical news cycle is, and if in advertising your goal is to differentiate, then yeah, a positive message is going to stand out dramatically nowadays. But I think one of the things that's always been a challenge for me is seeing organizations who take that doom and gloom kind of message. And I understand, sometimes you're dealing with a very tough issue. If you're dealing with famine and food, crises, those are challenging issues that you want to convey the the sense of urgency and the sheer need. But, it's one of those where you also see those kind of doom and gloom advertisements that very much prey on guilt and disenfranchise the people that they're trying to serve by kind of making it seem like these people are beyond hope, they're helpless. The only way they can succeed or the only hope they have is for someone else to intervene.
Absolutely.
Jeff, have you ever seen or heard of the Golden Radiator and the Rusty Radiator Awards?
No, I have not.
It is, I'll have to...
Sounds fun.
I'll send it to you. It's the Norwegian Students and Academics International Assistance Fund that puts out an award sets each year. The Rusty Radiator Award, which is, I think, maybe how it started, highlights fundraising videos that have the worst use of stereotypes. The kind of things that are unfair to the people in the campaigns and kind of work against long-term development and kind of fights against poverty. And they're not bashful. They put it up there and say, this is what we think is some of the worst. But then they kind of said, okay, well, wait, we also need to highlight the other. And so they've created the Golden Radiator Award, which goes to images and advertising campaigns that highlight the dignity and creativity and engagement of people and kind of steps outside of stereotypes. So I'll be sure to put a note out a link in the show notes. This is a group that I've wanted to get on here for an episode, but I think it hits to what you're saying of there's a way to captivate people to respond to an immediate crisis by showing a path to improvement rather than guilting into a sense of, we have an obligation, but you don't want it to be from guilt. You want it to be from connectedness, I think. So,
well, and we saw this a lot. Obviously a large chunk of my job is political. And so I work with hundreds of candidates a cycle, from everybody from the local dog catcher to, presidential campaigns. And we've seen more and more fundraising support go to a positive message. When a candidate leads with, my opponent opposes jobs, my opponent doesn't support Social Security. When we work with these candidates, we see fundraising dollars go down because they're putting a negative connotation from their campaign. But if you look at Bernie Sanders and Obama as a model, they ran on the idea of hope and change, the idea of positive messaging, the idea that, and not to say that those are campaigns that are the ideas that all campaigns should aspire to, and that's not at all what I'm saying. It's just that we can look in terms of pure fundraising dollars. When you look back at the messages, people responded to an emotional connection and the idea that they can have a positive response and make a difference in the world. And as much as I work with a number of clients that push on these negative connotations of opponents or push a negative message through independent expenditures or these attack ads, we don't see support of the candidate who is indirectly affected by that go up. We just don't. There's not a correlation. You see, it's more of a suppression tactic than it is kind of boosting the other side, boosting the side that is being supported by the attack. And I think that that's very much true in mission-driven organizations. If, like you said, there's obviously, it's difficult to have a positive spin on famine and some of these international relief efforts that organizations we work with cover. But at the end of the day, that is the job of the organization to think of. How do we put this in a way that frames us and what we do for our constituents that really drives a good feeling? Where does the happy, good feeling come from when we started the organization or, when our founders launched the organization?
That mission-driven call to action around a positive message. Are there any fundamentals for how to combine that with a call to action so that people actually do say, oh, here is my here's my need and way to act online that is most motivational or most inspiring or just leads to the highest actual acquisition rates. Are there any fundamentals there that you would say have emerged as best practices, either in how you create your campaigns or where you market them as far as platforms?
Yes. So first of all, good planning is always essential. Bright color schemes, concise text, those are all things. But in the digital age, we have what we have never had in other mediums, is you have the ability to retarget somebody to death. You know, if you can get somebody with one ad to go to your site or get the idea of your site, you can then potentially show them ads forever.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You can lead them now through this funnel of conversation to get them into the idea that they should support the organization. Typically, what we've seen is that it takes around 6 to 10 online ad exposures, regardless if they click or not, just if they are seeing the ad, that people will support an organization. That is primarily the tipping point. So the idea that organizations give up on a user prematurely should keep in mind that it takes around 6 to 10 times that they see your ad that they start to kind of get this affinity for the organization. You know, and they can now do research so much faster. So maybe they click on your site and then you retarget them with an ad, and then they go online and do some just search engine research. And then you utilize your search engine optimization. Oh, you're going to retarget them with that. And, then they're starting to see ads in Facebook. And then they're starting to, kind of get to this moment of building where you start kind of the idea that end of year is coming and you can move them down this funnel to support. And retargeting, while it can be annoying, is a very effective tool in getting people to remember an organization and cut through the noise. The one thing that we do see organizations do, not to get overly nerdy about it, is that, first of all, it's a much less tangible medium in the sense that you can't take a board member and say, go online and see my ad. But they can hold a direct mail piece in their hand, or they can see a DRTV spot or what have you. But it is a much more targetable tool. So getting beyond that non-tangible, I know I made this comment at the DMA conference on the panel, but it does happen still. I mean, I had a call with a client who called me and said, I turned on the internet and didn't see my ad. Where is it? And there still is a lot of misconception of how to really understand and engage an individual online. And because it is so intangible, targeting is making that better. Retargeting is making that better. And a lot of organizations we've found want to see the ads themselves, and maybe as proof that it's working. And we see this with a lot of mission-driven organizations, that they want to have people in their office. They want to have board members see the ads. But again, they're spending money on their own people instead of targeting potential donors. So how do you restrict retargeting from hitting your own people and saturating them instead of going after people who are new to the organization? And that's a trick that a number of organizations are struggling with, because they're kind of caught in this catch-22. Well, my board won't approve online fundraising because they don't see the ads. But when they see the ads, we're wasting money on them and we're not driving the ROI that we should. And then they think to themselves, well, online was ineffective, so we should kind of cancel that program. Or the idea that people aren't clicking through the ads and making the donations. I mean, less than 1% of online ads get clicked through. So the attribution method is completely different. Most of it is view through. People seeing the ads, doing some research, and coming back to the site within a measurable time frame that you can then tie back to the ads. And we're seeing more organizations become comfortable with that, but it's just not the same as direct mail. A direct mail piece, an organization has an expectation of what they will bring in prior to the mail piece being dropped at all. They can sell that to their board. Here's the piece we're going to drop. Here's the formula at which cost equals return. And, because they can calculate a typical response rate, they can calculate a typical average gift, and then they can see. But when you're stepping into these online uncharted territories, boards are conservative by nature, and understandably so. And there has been a lot of misinformation out there on how to fundraise online that boards get scared. Yeah. Executive directors get scared, But again, older donors are dying out, and how do you replace them? My best friend for several years ran a nonprofit educational organization in Texas. And when they did donor analysis, they realized that 95% of their donations came from 2 zip codes in Houston.
That's pretty reliant on that small circle, and you hate to see it, but one outlier occurrence, like I'm sure a number of those people right now are dedicating their support to hurricane relief. That might be a level of over-reliance that can be devastating.
Absolutely. The organization became dependent upon that. My friend is no longer at the organization, but they became dependent upon it. And I shudder to think what their end of year fundraising numbers will look like when you realize that these Houstonians are supporting disasters, or they're bailing themselves out. I mean, there's going to be a lot of damage that has to be repaired, and there's not going to be as much disposable income.
Absolutely.
So this then leads into the idea of, in donations and online advertising targeting, one of the worst things you can do is over-segment. And that's what this organization has done. They have over-segmented into a spot where they're looking for that purple shoe wearing, green car driving, skinny jean wearing professional that they've lost the forest for the trees. And this is something that I work with nonprofits with all of the time. And just because you can over-target in digital doesn't mean that you should. And I see this all the time, especially in political. We had an organization last cycle that came to us and said, we want to target second-generation Hispanics. We're English dominant, speak Spanish at home, are registered Democrats in the state of Colorado with this propensity turnout score to come out and vote. You've now raised the cost so high that your ROI is difficult to get to. And not only that, it's cheaper to go after an entirely wider audience and find new people.
Yeah, I could see that. I know I've probably fallen victim to this myself, that thinking, oh, wow, we can reach that exact audience, and not realizing how that cost and return on investment kind of relationship plays out, where you all of a sudden realize, yes, you could go preach to the choir more directly than ever before, but you can also bring more people into the choir in a more accessible and more affordable way than ever before.
Absolutely. And it's amazing to see, but in the digital age, we do fall victim to this all the time.
Yeah. Jeff, do you have any advice or tips with the mission-driven organizations that you work with about how to move beyond that non-tangible? Perhaps how to work with your board that might not be comfortable with that and still present some key performance indicators or things that they could do to become at least nervously supportive of it so that they can say, okay, we can do this 1 year. And then you could kind of say, look at the success we had without them kind of giving up prematurely.
Absolutely. The first thing that we suggest is having everybody from the executive director to the board to the people actually managing the campaign have a serious discussion as to how they attribute donations. What is that donation? Just because people are hit with an online ad doesn't mean they're going to strictly donate online. And just because people are hit with a direct mail piece does not simply mean that they're going to write a check and send it in the mail. I mean, my grandmother, in her 90s, she loves her iPad and loves her MacBook. She donates to all the pet organizations and politicians she likes, but she doesn't write checks anymore. She said she hasn't written a check in 15 years. And I say to her, why is that? And she goes, well, my arthritis, but now it's just so much easier. But I get hit with all these direct mail pieces all the time, and I love these organizations. And the direct mail piece is the thing that clicks in my mind that I'm going to donate. And I donate, and then I give them my email address and stuff. And then I get funneled into asking for donations online as well. So having this idea that these departments, this direct marketing and this online and the board have this conversation of what is the donor look like? There's not an online donor and there's not an offline donor. They're just donors. They may prefer specific channels for communication and specific channels for donation. But at the end of the day, nobody is the devices or the household that they are in. They are just people. And having that frank conversation of attribution is a way to get a lot of boards off the ledge, or at least a couple of inches back from the ledge. Having this conversation that here are the stats. You're more likely to get hit by lightning than you are to click on an online banner ad. But that doesn't mean that, seeing those online ads for that new car that you have been researching for, most people do a lot of online research for cars. And the online ads do push people to get more information. They may not have clicked on them. They may have seen a different model in the ads that made them think, well, maybe I don't want that Forester, and maybe the Outback is actually better for me as an individual. That's the thing. All of those online ads contributed to me going into the dealer and buying that Outback. And it's really kind of the idea that you get people moving toward how do they look and communicate and research online to get them in, and that they will come back to donate. This is something we struggle with our government clients all the time, is that because government websites cannot be pixeled. So there's very little attribution that can actually happen online. And specifically when you're registering for a branch of the military service, you're going to get hit with an ad many times. And maybe you're in the car and you've got it on your phone and you're pulling into the parking lot and boom, how about you join X service? Most people don't think to themselves, you know what? I just got hit with an ad online. I'm going to go register for the Marine Corps. I'm going to go sign up for the next 4 years of my life. It just doesn't happen. And so they'll see an ad, people will look at the ad, and they will do more research. You have to realize that the online is a research tool that is faster than we've ever seen. And it's only getting faster. And so people are seeing ads, and it's a way to put it in front of them, and they will donate. But if you don't have the idea of how we're going to attribute online revenue or offline revenue to people who are not on direct mail files, it's not all just money that appears from the sky that the organization would have just gotten. So having that conversation, having clear messaging, having clear targeting parameters. Maybe test in a single state. Maybe test online advertising. We have a number of organizations that see high donations from California, New York, Florida, and Washington. Maybe you target heavily at investing your digital budget in Texas only. There's not direct mail to contaminate the test. There's not DRTV running. Confine tests. Continue to keep messaging simple, only 2 variations or a couple of variations, and use that as a barometer to show success on a smaller scale. Look at it in that framework, and I've found that a lot of boards and a lot of organizations have started to kind of calm and accept the idea of, well, look, we ran a bunch of ads in Texas, not a market we have a lot of presence based on our current donation needs or current donation asks. And we got a 0.09, less than a 0.1% click-through, but yet our donations from the state of Texas, both on and offline, came up 7%, 10%. I mean, maybe some freak occurrence happened in Texas to dilute that, yeah. But I highly doubt it. And those are the things that you can take to a board and just say, look, this year for end of year fundraising from November 27th through January 5th, we ran this big test in Texas. We had this click-through rate, but we had this amount in donations. And looking at it from, this is when the majority of things happened. This is when we started to see revenue kind of rolling in, and looking at it from that, helping them understand from a direct marketer's point of view where the dollars were spent and when dollars started to roll in, they'll become more comfortable.
If an organization has done a lot of these things, so let's say they have that mindset shift. They've said, okay, we know, we're a mission-driven organization. We need to be out there. It's getting word of our mission to possible supporters. They've developed the positive messaging. They've said, we're going to stay with this effort. We have a level of persistence. We're not going to over-segment. We're going to kind of have a broad reach, and we know how we're going to measure this. Are there any things that you have seen or any examples of organizations that have then found what it is that takes them from a good organization at their online advertising to a great organization with this?
Definitely. We have seen a number of organizations. Of course, nobody wants to let out their secret sauce, so I can't mention them by name. But sure. A number of organizations that we have seen have started to shift. Now they've seen success in digital. Now they are building on their success through direct mail. When you start to combine those efforts and realize that the donor is the donor, and start utilizing digital in a way where you are combining folks in that effort. You're going to do a direct mail piece, but then you're going to also target those same individuals with online ads to remind them to donate, to remind them to look for their pieces in the mail that are coming. That is where we've seen organizations come from a good organization to a great organization. Another example that we've seen is an organization that, a large majority of these organizations have bought email addresses for fundraising purposes, whether that's from Care2, whether that's from Change.org, whether that's from Facebook. You're still going to have a high unsubscribe rate. Or you've gotten them at a rally and they've unsubscribed. Taking those folks and then matching all of that information through Facebook custom audiences. Upload your entire unsubscribe email list and retarget them with ads to try and get them re-engaged in the organization. Looking at how digital and email and offline are not separate things anymore. They are one view of your donor and your potential donor. And that's where we have seen organizations go from good to great. when they get that point of view, like, oh, we've got the right number of pixels on our site, we've got the right mix of retargeting, we've got the right amount of fundraising asks via email, we've got the right, email is reinforcing direct mail is reinforcing digital is reinforcing direct mail, email is being reinforced by direct mail. I mean, there's a way to kind of couple these things now that didn't exist. Like when I get an email from an organization, even an organization that I care very deeply for, I'll open it. Sometimes the first thing I'll do in the day is I'll open an email and then I'll think, oh, I'll get back to that. And then I don't. Well, if an organization had dropped a retargeting pixel into their email, they could have seen that I opened the email and abandoned and didn't donate or didn't take the action that their email was prompting me to take. They can retarget me with an app. And that's a way to re-engage these users during the day or during the week or what have you, that reminds them to be mindful of their organization.
That idea of retargeting and building that comprehensive and cohesive marketing program that blends online, digital, direct, email. Sometimes I think people wonder, are you being overly present to people? I always equate that idea of the retargeting email. How many times have I had a thought and shot myself an email and said, do this later? And then forwarded myself the same email when I saw it kind of sneak into the bottom of the end of the inbox. And I said, nope, get that back up there. It's the same thing, just in a digital way of saying, if you have zero connection to the organization, you're going to see these and you're just going to move on. But if we've got something that does resonate with you, that increased presence is just going to provide the window of opportunity where all of a sudden I can act. Providing that window of opportunity multiple times is the way that you actually do get someone to engage with you and take that very, hopefully not just that act of making a donation, but then also those very social acts of owning that donation and sharing that donation and making that a part of their online presence.
Absolutely. I think that there's very much now in this digital social media age, this value in sharing how you support an organization, how you go above and beyond to do something good for someone else. And social media has given that. And now there's, in a lot of ways, this social pressure to keep up with that, keep that presence online up, because in an online social media way, you can be anything. And people like to show, I donated X to Y organization. And it encourages people, other people, their friends, in a way to keep up with the Joneses. To say, Susie donated X amount to the Red Cross for their gray sky disaster in Houston. Boy, that's huge. I need to get on that. It is another level of advocation. Is that even a word? I don't even.
I think so.
We can coin it on. We can coin that on the show if you don't.
There you go.
But it's another way for people to validate your organization at the same time.
Yep, and that endorsement of the organization is, as we know, so meaningful for motivating other people to give. And if there's anything in the world that I'm going to say, I can get behind keeping up with the Joneses, it's the idea of, keeping up with the Joneses on their philanthropy. I wish, that's a trend of peer pressure that I'd love to see get started.
I would too. And it is there because now everybody has a reach to their peer group in a way that is much, much more in touch. I mean, I'm connected on Facebook to people I went to high school with that I haven't seen in 20 years. But now if I make a donation to something and I share it through the sharing tools of an organization, everybody can see that now. All of my Facebook friends can see that. It's now a way to help people get involved and get others involved in an organization that, really implies this social pressure, which I We've seen it start to happen in the political space, especially in direct mail. And I feel like we will start to see more and more of it going into these mission-driven organizations, is that, there is this social pressure to support organizations as a whole, but how do you then focus that through to your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great. And that's a great challenge for our mission-driven organizations to say, how do we create the environment for people to do that? And Jeff, your feedback and insight today is definitely going to be hugely helpful to our organizations. As we wrap up here, I just want to, you've given so much information. I think there's so many things that people are going to want to follow up on or learn more about, just kind of your conversations on persistence and oversegmenting and attribution, comprehensiveness, owning and sharing that process. Are there any ways that people can stay in touch with you or Conversant or any resources that you find that are good for people to engage with to learn more about this?
Sure. I am always available via email. It may be a little slower to respond depending on where we are in the political cycle, but I'm always available via email, which is jcosgrove, JCOSGROVE, V as in Victor, at conversantmedia.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. You'll know it's me if you look me up, and there's a hand-drawn portrait of me that my younger son did in kindergarten.
I love it. Again, differentiation. It's easy. It's an easy way to stand out.
Easy way. It provides an incredible likeness according to all of my coworkers. But so those are definitely the two easiest ways to find me online. And then you can always follow Epsilon, our parent company, and Conversant, both on LinkedIn and through other social media tools. There's always a wealth of information, as well as Epsilon's data cooperative Advocacy, our nonprofit mission-driven side for Advocacy has been in the business for 10 years. Advocacy itself has been in business longer than that, but we have been an industry leader in the not-for-profit space for the last 10 years. And that is that can be followed on Twitter as well as on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I think, is a better spot, as well as we have a Advocacy blog at epsilon.com.
Great, and I'll be sure to link to all of those in the show notes. Jeff, thank you for taking your time. Last thing, what's next for you, or what's the latest thing on your radar?
Oh, man, I shudder to say this, but the 2018 political cycle is upon us.
Yep.
I felt like we just left that carnival show, but we're right back into it, and so I'll be heads down through that. And then we're getting ready for Giving Tuesday. That's one of my favorite days of the whole year. At Conversant, we obviously are a retail leader. That's the majority of what we do as an organization. But as well as the retail team kind of gears up, we always have this conversation about Giving Tuesday. We're really going to get in front of organizations and get in front of people. And really, it's exciting to see as Giving Tuesday kind of catches hold that we can see people engaging more and more. And it just helps me feel really good about the world as we start to focus a little less on consumerism and focus more on helping our fellow person.
Absolutely. And I'm going to have an upcoming episode speaking to people about online giving days, and hopefully we can dive into that. We might be coming back to pick your brain sometime soon. We'll give you a little break, as you do all that side political stuff, that makes its way onto that plate.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sean. It's really been a pleasure to be on the show, and I really appreciate not only you coming to the conference, but asking me to speak on the show. And it's been a wonderful conversation for me.
My pleasure, Jeff. Thanks for all you've shared with me and the Philanthropy Podcast listeners. We look forward to following you and all your success.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a nice one, Sean.
I hope you enjoyed our interview with Jeff and heard some ideas of how you can help your organization in their online advertising efforts. As Jeff mentioned, the leap from good to great comes when we realize donors aren't defined by any of the categories we label them as. So even if online advertising isn't your direct responsibility, Having the conversation of how you can partner with your online and social media efforts will be a dramatic boost to your organization and identify you as someone working across fields to make gains. That's how we raise up all our organizations and start encouraging people to be more philanthropic across the board. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your thankless work, and keep it up. Before we leave, I want to remind you again to please subscribe to the Philanthropy Podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're not sure how to subscribe, just visit thephilanthropypodcast.com and you'll see large subscribe links that make it easy for you. You can also find past episodes and ways to contact me on the website as well. With that, I'd like to thank Jason Shaw, whose Forever Believe and Feels Good to Be are provided under Creative Commons license and greet us and take us out each week. Take care, everyone, and have a great week.